Hey, friends and fam. Wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about actually what I've been reading. So, as of late, I've done a deep dive into some books about waging the war within. And what that is emotional war within. That's the war that we have to win every single day in order to accomplish anything. Our emotions can get the best of us, they can slow us down, they can even derail us entirely from reaching our goals. We can make decisions based on emotions, we can act in emotion when something comes up or something with a loved one comes up, or even when there's just an unexpected uh, change in plans. Our emotions take over. And this is something that I suffered with for a long time in my earlier years. Less so now because I have the love of Christ within me. But before that, it was a major struggle, and even time to time, it is still a struggle because I'm human, just like anybody else. And through my research and trying to win that battle or waging the war within, as Jason Wilson likes to put it, I stumbled across this man, and I've read both of his books. Today, I want to talk about Battle Cry. I recently finished Battle Cry on Audible. It's a great book, and if you haven't read it, or if you would like to even just listen to it, you can have the author actually reading the book to you over Audible, so that's great. But I want to talk about just some of the subject linings that are a part of this book. So there are chapters, and in each chapter, we're talking about waging a war in that specific area. So it'll give you kind of a synopsis of what's happened, real life application, as well as some, biblical context as to what the right thing to do is, and then a plan of action, or I guess a battle plan to encounter this part of yourself and to win that battle. So, chapter one, he talks about escaping emotional incarceration. That's like many of us for years have never actually cried. And I'm speaking to the guys here. We've never actually unleashed our emotions, let them out, shown our emotions to anyone else. And we are in emotional incarceration. We've locked ourselves in there. We are too afraid to be authentic and show our emotions for fear of people calling us weak or made fun of or something like that. And we really shouldn't live in that fear, because a real man can show his emotions and share them with others around him, share them with his loved ones. So this is a huge one, one that I have struggled with, at times still struggle with, because just like anybody else, I have a tendency to put up a hard face and not want to share that something hurts. And the reality is, if you don't do that, it just builds up, builds up, builds up, builds up, and one day you blow up on the person or the people you love most because you haven't let out those emotions. So it's a great chapter, and I highly recommend digging in and doing the work. The second chapter is misconstrued masculinity. This one, for me, has been a big part of my life. I used to equate masculinity with, um, you know, relationships. I used to equate, okay, if I'm, able to get into this relationship or this relationship or get this girl or do that, I was thinking that that made me into a man, and it's not. You know, it's the very thing that actually makes you a boy, and you're pretending to be a man. And I think that's a huge lesson I've had to learn. And anyone who makes that maturing step into manhood, would recognize that as well for themselves. So I think this is something that many people need, not enough people hear. Third chapter, putting peace in perspective. I think he even talks about um, just, uh, because something is not pressing right now does not mean that it is resolved. Just because there is an absence of a conflict happening does not mean that there is a presence of peace. And that's a great thing to remember, because you may have a relationship with someone that you just haven't talked to for years, or they haven't talked to you, or whatever. And still, the nothing has changed. Even though time has passed, there's still animosity, there's still anger, and it's like we have the perception that things are peaceful, but really, you show up at the wrong place at the wrong time and see the wrong person, it's a huge conflict. So this chapter goes into that, talks about settling that, and actually, recognizing it in our own lives, because we all have those relationships. Chapter number 4, courageous transparency. This one, there is no power like the power in the truth. Um, the truth really does have the power to set you free. And, he talks about Nelson Mandela, and he talks about Gandhi, and of course, he talks about Jesus Christ, and how these were examples of men who stood on truth and were able to take down entire empires or entire countries, or in Jesus' case, take on the world with truth. That was the thing that they were armed with, was truth. And that courageous transparency is the thing that toppled so many with just one voice. And he quotes this in a book, and he says, if you want to change the world, start by telling the truth. Start by being honest, because it starts with one. And when we can do that, we can see real change. So be honest. You want to change the world? Be honest with yourself. Great lesson. The 5th chapter, abort your shadow mission. Everybody has a shadow mission. You don't believe me? What's that one thing that you still think, I can get into that and I can be really good at it, or I had success at it when I was younger. I'll come back to it. Maybe you're a musician, maybe you're a fighter, maybe you dreamed of being a rap artist or being on a record label or something. And that's your shadow mission. Shadow mission, because it's still lingering around in your head as if you're going to work at it. But the reality is, that's not what God's called you to do. That's not where He's called you to, and definitely not in this season. And that part of your life may have been for a part of a season in your life, but it's no longer that. And it's time to recognize that, and it's time to let it go. We have to make way for our true mission in life, and we have to get rid of any ambitions in the shadow mission. So this is a great chapter on releasing those things. Because when I was growing up, I thought I was going to be a professional athlete. I thought I was going to own NFL teams. I thought I was going to do all these things, which kids always think they're going to do. And, you can do any of those things. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, once you're delineated the path that you should go, you got to put the other stuff aside. It's no longer time to go and try to be an astronaut if you can't even get through college. It's no longer time to try and be a professional fighter if that's not where God calls you to be. If He calls you to, management somewhere, that's where you're to be. And it's time to get rid of those shadow missions, or distinguish them, remove them from our lives, and follow the true path that God is directing us on. Next chapter, purging passivity. Christian, please do not get this wrong. Passiveness and meekness are two different things. They're basically opposite sides of the same coin. What do I mean? To be passive, if there is a conflict, you let something else happen. You let others take the lead in front of you. You fail to make a direct contribution to either side of this conflict, either out of fear or fear of what people may say about you, think about you, or fear of consequence. That's not the life that God's called us to be. He hasn't called us to be passive. We were called to be meek. And if you look up meek by its definition, it is strength. It is strength under control. It's having the absolute ability to destroy, but choosing not to. Like a black belt martial artist at a hit and run with an angry person, choosing not to pursue that emotion. So it's under control. Power, strength, all those things. And choosing not to fight rather than being too afraid to make an action. Chapter 7, combat communication. This is something he outlined, and even in marriage, we say things out of anger, we scream things, we yell things. The thing about combat communication, and you learn this in the military, even though things are, people are screaming, people are yelling, it's because there is obviously something that needs to get done. And the idea is that you need to blunt your mind to any of those distractions of what's happening in the moment, the scariness of the moment, and listen to the message behind what is being said. In marriage, you may be having conflicts or arguments with your wife. This doesn't mean that because she screams that you scream back. No, this means that because she screams, you listen and you try to determine what's behind the screaming. Same thing on the battlefield. This doesn't mean that because people are fighting on the battlefield and screaming that it's all out panic and pandemonium. No, they're communicating via, even though it's in the battlefield and they have to scream at each other and they have to say, they're communicating. They're getting a message across from point A to point B in the quickest manner possible, direct. And that's what combat communication is. And we can use that in every relationship we have. So I think it was a great chapter to go through. Number 8, sexual self-control. Being able to put ourselves in the right positions to avoid any of these things, like, being sexually deviant is half of the battle. We can control what we can control. We can remove ourselves and make sure we're not in that situation to begin with before it even starts. So we're planning and putting ourselves on the high ground, on the defensive against the attacks of the enemy, because he's going to use whatever he can in order to dissuade us, in order to throw us off course just a little bit, in order to make us make exceptions to certain things that we normally wouldn't. But he uses that and just pushes the line just a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. And then soon we find ourselves far, far away from what our original intent was. We find ourselves right in the lion's den, and we find ourselves committing some atrocities. And the idea is, let's head those off before we even get there. Let's put in plans that prevent us from doing so. I know pastors that don't take meetings without having their, with the opposite sex. They don't take meetings. Doesn't happen. Or I know, like Paul Washer, when he travels and he goes around the country and he does speaking engagements, his son is with him every single engagement. And his son has been with him, traveling around, doing all the engagements for years because he's being held accountable. And he wouldn't do anything in front of his son to disrespect his covenant with his mother. So this is his best contingency plan in order to prevent himself, Paul Washer, from falling. So I think this is a great chapter to sit on, to meditate on, to learn from, and figure out ways that we can apply it. And finally, the last chapter is accepting affirmation. And guys, we want this, but yet when we get it, we brush it aside or pass it back to someone else. You know, I have a friend who I shared this with. He's the kind of guy that he's an awesome person. You say, "Hey, you're awesome. You're doing great," and he'll be like, "Nah, man, you're the man." And he throws it right back around to you, like he's passing it to you like a lateral play. He's not sitting there and accepting the affirmation that he has been given, but rather to take the pressure off of himself of having to actually sit there and absorb it because he feels unworthy. He's passing it back to you. So now you're the one that's awesome, and he's the one that is left praising you. This is a failure to accept affirmation. This is a failure to accept the kind words and blessings that people are speaking over you. And this is something that a lot of guys suffer with. If someone tells you you're a great man, you're a good person, you're a great son, awesome father, accept it, sit with it. Don't pass the buck around to someone else. This goes in line with rest. Men particularly say we want rest, and then we want to work ourselves to the death because we don't feel worthy of the rest. It's the same exact thing with the affirmation. We need both, and we need to take both when we have the opportunity. So anyways, guys, that's a quick synapse. There was so much more rich content within this book. I highly advise you go out and audible it yourself or buy the paperback version, whatever. Battle Cry by Jason Wilson. Really, really one of the best books in order to help us complete, really our salvation and becoming unified with the Holy Spirit. We need to be healed of all of these things that have hurt us in the past and that we've held on to for years and years and years. And this is a great tool with actual guidance to help you do that. So I highly recommend this book. If you haven't heard it, go ahead and look it up. And I hope this has helped you to discover a little bit more about yourself. And I look forward to talking to you guys. So drop a comment in the comment box. Let me know if you've read this book, what you think of it, what your reading recommendations may be, or if there's more information that you would like. Maybe you want to actually talk through some things, inquire about, how I can help you, how we can help you. Please reach out. Anyways, thank you for listening. Let's go out there. Let's go and make moves and not excuses. God bless.